And we are live and ready to roll. So good morning, everybody. It's, what is it, Thursday morning, I guess, the 18th. And this is the Senate Agricultural Committee. And we're going to be hearing from Representative John Bartholomew in regards to H 421. It's the Animal Cruelty Investigation Response and Training bill that we got over from the House. We talked with the House members yesterday and they reported on it and thought we would hear from John this morning. So I think you know everybody on the committee, John. Welcome to the Senate, and if you would like to give us your thoughts and ideas in regards to H 421, we'd be glad to hear from you.
Well, it's a pleasure to be back in the Senate. This Senate room is a lot bigger than the one I'm used to, so it's nice.
Yeah, you got a pretty nice chair there too.
Yes, this is a better chair than you would normally give me when I would come to your room. Yeah.
Well, beats the heck out of that little stool we used to make you sit on.
Yeah, I usually would end up in the file cabinet. And I'm not sure what you already have been told about this bill or what you would like to hear from me. I would point out, of course, that this has been a pretty high priority in the reports coming from the Animal Cruelty Investigation Advisory Board. And if you recall, that was actually a board that was originally suggested by the Senate. And they have provided us with reports and recommendations, and their concern for a number of years, and as well as discussions. And when I was on House Agriculture and Forestry, was who is actually authorized to go and initiate an investigation when there's an allegation of animal cruelty. And our statutes have been not very clear, and that's basically what this bill is trying to do. And I think that really the statement of purpose clearly describes what the bill is doing. You've probably read it, but It proposes to amend the list of individuals authorized to investigate cases of animal cruelty, require humane officers to receive trainings approved by the Animal Cruelty Investigation Advisory Board, require the board to maintain an index of humane officers who've had the training, and allows the board to create a refresher course if they see fit in the future for these investigators. That's basically what this does. And I guess a couple of important points that may or may not have already been made about this is when you look at how the definition is changed. I'm on page 2 of the bill where it says any enforcement officer is defined 23 VSA section 411A. That's basically a definition of a law enforcement officer that's already in statute. And I would point out here that keep in mind that just because you are on that list does not mean that you would ever be expected to or required to conduct an animal cruelty investigation. It's just a convenient definition for what constitutes a law enforcement officer. And one example I could use there is, I believe if you check that chapter, the Capitol Police would be on that list. Now, they could conceivably be engaged in an animal cruelty investigation, but probably never would, just as an example. Another point I would make that I think is important is if you look at the people who could be humane officers, it talks about a designated employee, Humane Society, meaning an employee, not just someone who has some casual association, and an animal control officer appointed by the legislative body of a municipality. Those are people that could be included, but one conspicuous absence there would be veterinarians. And you could reasonably say, well, why wouldn't a veterinarian be able to do this? And I think the answer is, well, number one, veterinarians probably aren't interested in doing that. And they may or may not have the training to actually conduct an investigation. They may not understand the law enforcement piece of it, but there's nothing in this bill that precludes a law enforcement officer who's being called into a case from bringing in whoever they want to assist them in evaluating the situation, collecting evidence, providing advice. So that is where a veterinary professional would come into play if the needed to help a humane officer to conduct the investigation. I think there was also something added by House Agriculture in terms of the animal control officer. And there's words that they added there, who's authorized by the legislative body to perform the duties and function of a humane officer. And I believe it was Vermont League of Cities and Towns asked that to be added, so that just because you are an animal control officer, the town wants to know what you're up to. And so you can't just on your own say, I'm going to go off, get this training and be an animal, a humane officer. You have to have authority of your town as well as being the animal control officer for your town. So those, I don't know if those points were made before. Linda tells me I don't need to go through the bill, and you've already heard from, I believe, the presenter of the bill.
Yeah.
So I don't know if there's anything else you'd like me to add. I
Well,
support the bill. I think that you'll hear from the board and they will support the bill.
yeah. Well, over the years, you've given us a lot of good professional input on bills from the years you spent on the Ag Committee. And we remember that you'd been kind of pushing this idea for a while, and that's why we wanted to get you in and get your take on it, John. It sounds like everybody seems to be in agreement with what the House finished up with, and we've got to sell it to our colleagues in the Senate, but it sounds like most everybody is on the same page. So there really isn't any pushback from anybody. Sounds like most everybody's in agreement with it. So Chris got a question for you.
Well, and maybe
Brian.
I guess I missed it. John, you're not on House Ag anymore?
No, I'm feeling a little bit like I've lost my identity after being there for so long, but I'm actually was assigned to transportation this time around.
Oh, that's right. I have heard that. Okay, well, we'll just take your more general expertise then. There's been also some discussion, and maybe it's not fair to ask if you haven't been part of it, but around the shelter bill that you were part of last year, and the basic idea is that we inadvertently made it tough for grazers, people who are grazing their animals. Do you have any, or maybe Mr. Chair, is that coming somewhere else, or was that ever discussed as adding to this? Do we have a sense of either of those?
Well, I don't know. It was sort of talked about putting that in the miscellaneous bill, so I don't know if it's buried in there, and we didn't hear much about it yesterday. But it might be buried in that 420 bill that came over. But I would expect that we will, when we deal with 420, if it isn't there, we'll, put it in there and get it done. Well, it's all we gotta do is clarify some language, I believe, in regards to animals that are out grazing.
I'm not exactly
right.
sure what the House is doing with it, but my understanding is that there's a minor tweak that's being proposed. I would point out that I was shared on a message from Barry Laundrie. I don't know if you remember him. He used to be the Vermont spokesman for the Humane Society of the United States. He's no longer in that role, but he's still associated with the organization. And the message he sent was dazzlingly comprehensive in his arguments about why this wasn't a problem and how these issues are that it just isn't presenting the problem that they expected. So I would encourage you to reach out to him to comment on this. Like I said, his review of the law and his position on this was extremely comprehensive and thorough.
Well, we'll certainly, Linda will have his name and we'll certainly get hold of him, when we work on that. Any other, Brian, you had a question, I think.
I did, Bobby, and I can wait until we actually go over the bill if you like, but I'm looking on page 2, John, of the bill, line 7. It says a designated Humane Society employee. So I can see a question coming up that might say, okay, does that mean the lady that sits at the desk and is an intake person, or who designates that person?
Well, my presumption is that it would be designated by the organization.
Okay.
That they've identified this person as someone who they are willing to, because they're going to have to send them to training. But then the key point is that there's a real association and you're an actual employee of an organization that's recognized by the state, registered with the Secretary of State as a bona fide animal humane society.
That sounds like a good
That's
answer.
my reading of it.
Yeah. All right. Thank you.
If there are no other comments or questions for John, thanks a lot, John, for your time. Appreciate your thoughts and ideas on that, and your time this morning for being with us, and we'll move on.
Okay,
So-
it's always a pleasure. Thank you.
Well, it hasn't always been, but today went pretty good. We had the new guy in from Danville yesterday reporting, and Henry Pearl, and he wondered if we were going to initiate him or not, and we were good to him. So anyways, thanks, John, and we'll be in touch.
Okay, thank you.
So committee, I think Jim's on the line with us, and I don't know, do we have, I wonder if Linda has that language, or you could pull it up on the screen for the members to see that new language, Jim, that the agency.
Sure, I have it right. Yep, I have it ready to go.
Oh, good. You're a good man, Jim.
Here we go.
And thanks for jumping on with us so quickly.
Yeah.
Oh, no problem. No problem. Okay, so for the record, Jim Demer, Let's Console. This is the Senate Appropriations hasn't seen this yet. Actually, we haven't walked through this. This is a recommendation from Senate Education, which passed the bill out without changes, but recommended that appropriations make these changes because they're more about money than anything else. So should I just take you through the changes? Is that what you want?
Yeah, that's what I'd like, and what we're thinking is that we would kind of go through those with you, Jim. And if we can agree, you're gonna go through those changes, I believe this afternoon with Brian and the Education Committee. And what we talked about is possibly doing a joint amendment on the Senate floor from both Education and us on these particular changes. And if we get that far with the bill, we would do a joint amendment to the bill on the Senate floor. So I think Brian, if he hasn't already contacted you, will be contacting you and asking you to run through those amendments with the Ed Committee.
Okay, yep.
But
Yep.
I want to just jump in and make sure that we're talking about the same thing, because Campion has sent us two potential amendments. One is about money that shifts it to out of the ed fund and has a one-time appropriation and stuff like that. And the other is more technical in nature that comes from AOE directly. That's the one we're hoping to look at today.
They're both in
Yeah,
here.
it starts in section 4, Jim, I believe.
Yeah, so section 4, I believe that's the federal form.
Yeah.
And that has been amended to reflect AOE comments. So that's here as well as the changes to the funding.
Yeah, the budget part, I don't think we agree with it all, and I don't believe we do. But it'll be easier getting rid of that part. This part here, starting with section 4 is the one that I'd like to be able to spend a little time on with you this morning to explain those.
Okay. So let's go there. Go there. Okay. So we're in the part, it's section 3 actually, and of this draft, and it is the part that deals with the secretaries defining what is necessary to be collected for various federal benefits, given the fact that the forms won't be coming in for food programs because they're moving to universal. So the only change here really is, so when we're talking on line 20 here, Secretary shall define student poverty for purposes of, we had before determining qualification for federal funds by school districts, and they've broadened that out to say qualification for federal funds by LEAs, which are supervisory unions, school districts, and schools. So that's basically the theme to this amendment, is to include a broader scope in terms of what these definitions and forms are used for.
And Jim, is that, we've talked about this before, that you can, I don't want to say play games, but you can deal with this system differently if you are determining the boundaries at different spots. Does this give them the flexibility to do that?
So I'm not sure what that means, actually. I'm not sure.
Well, so you know, here in Burlington, some of our schools have universal meals, but the district itself doesn't. In other places, there's been discussions of, you know, it's all about hitting these federal averages. So if you, in some places lump more schools together, you could get the whole district in. In some places, you have to just do it by school. And I think that's an important feature that we want to make sure we're not precluding, in fact, if anything, encouraging. So that's what I mean. And it sounds like this gives them flexibility, but I don't know.
It sounds to me that that is true. It gives them more flexibility because it's giving them broader scope to define these for a broader group of entities. But I would defer, I think, on that question to AOE.
Thank you.
So that's it for section 3.
No,
Jim?
no, that this appears a number of times here. So just to say, they're using this language in numerous places here. I'll come back to B and C, but you'll see it here in 2 and 3 and B. So basically, all the data collection and requirements to collect is on not just school districts, but schools and SUs as well. The other change they made in B and C, again, we're up here where the secretary is doing the various things. One is defining student poverty. Here is determining student eligibility for various educational programs and benefits where economic need is a consideration. And C is collecting and reporting disaggregated and student level performance data as required. So those are the changes to this section.
So are you guys okay with that particular change?
I guess, although I still don't know exactly what it means.
Do you want to run through that? See, the bill that I have before here that you sent out on the 16th at 1 o'clock, those changes were already in there. So some of them changes were made on Tuesday. Is that right, Jim?
Oh boy, I have to say, Senator, I've been working on so many different bills and amendments, I can't recall the timing.
My sense of it is that different entities were requesting options, and Senate Ed said, we'll put them all in a bill. And so what you and I saw this morning, Mr. Chair, was just specifically the AOE section that Senator Campion said was technical, but this is looping in some of what the school the essays asked for and all that. So it's probably hard to delineate.
Yeah, see, if you go back through what the Ed Committee did on Tuesday or Wednesday, like these changes that Jim just talked about were already in that particular bill. So why don't we move on then, Jim?
Okay, so the other changes are on funding. Do you want to see those?
I don't think so. We want to go to that. I think we want to go to that section 4. Is it?
That's right here. Section 4. So we had to renumber this because we took out a section because it was the exemption from the excess speed penalty.
Yeah.
That was removed under this version because school budgets wouldn't be paying for these universal meals. So therefore they wouldn't have to have an exclusion from excess spending. So it got renumbered, but this section 3 is the old section 4 that you are referring to.
See, on what we got from the agency, is school districts, comma, and individual schools, students' eligibility for various educational programs and benefits where economic need is a consideration. Need is, yeah, a consideration. And then 2, see 2, collection by local school education agency, school districts and.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Jim, maybe it'd be easier. The email I sent you asking if you could come this morning has in that thread has the language that the chair's referencing.
Okay. Let me find that again.
Some of that is here, but it's not as.
yeah, it's not
So
very,
we're trying to figure out what we're really talking about.
Bobby, could I also ask, what does student level performance data mean? Are those like grades?
that's number C, Brian,
Yes.
or letter C.
Yeah.
Yeah, so this language here that Sam Pearson sent over with the AOEs is the same language as you're seeing here, but I put it into more our format.
Yeah, but some words are missing and all that, and aren't there, Jim?
What's missing?
Well, Brian just asked a question about C, letter C,
See. Yeah.
in the material that you have on the other screen that AOE sent over, doesn't, you've got a C showing on our screen, and
Yep.
but we don't have a C on this paper that Brian sent us this morning.
Right, but the words are the same. And for collecting and reporting disaggregated and student level performance data as required that was the language from the AOE. That's the same language as here. I just put it into our format by doing a list form. So you have A, B, and C. So it's easier to read.
So C is, Brian Collmore just asked a question. You want to ask that question again, Brian?
Sure, Bobby. I understand what disaggregated means. I don't understand exactly what student level performance data means. Does that mean like school marks, they're getting A's and B's, or does it mean something totally different? I don't know what that means.
Well, it's not defined and was defined by AOE. So they're the best person to answer that question. I read it to be student level performance usually means, I think, grade level performance.
Right. Okay. Why? I'm trying to understand why that would have anything to do with feeding students. In other words, only students that are getting good grades. I'm really not understanding this.
And
Well, I can't give that testimony because I'm not behind this language. I think you have to hear from AOE on that.
Okay.
well, and we can ask Brian about that particular language
okay.
as well.
Yep.
You want to be sure and mark that, Brian?
I will.
Yeah. Okay, Jim?
So we've been through this language. Aside from this language, the other changes are all to the funding.
That, in that language is language that came from AOE as well, I believe, right?
No, I'm not sure what the position on that is. That language came from the Vermont Superintendent's Association, I believe, working in conjunction with other advocates. Like there may be the Vermont School Boards Association, so the V's, if you will. I believe that was, it definitely came directly from the Superintendent's Association, and I believe working with others. And their
Yeah.
testimony was basically, if you put this in school budgets, then every school district, which are like 116 or so in the state, would have to pass budgets with this amount in there to cover universal school meals. And what happens when they don't pass budgets, and therefore they have to reduce their budgets, but this is an unfunded state mandate, so they can't not fund this. They would have to cut other programs or staff in order to make room in their budgets for this. And that was the kind of tenor of the testimony that they heard from the Vermont Superintendent's Association.
Jim, was there any recognition from those testifying that this isn't a mandate, starting in September, that this is that there's contemplated here a phase in? In fact, there is anticipated a phase in.
I don't recall if that came up.
Pretty salient fact, I would argue.
Yeah. Chris, did you have any other questions on Brian's language?
No, I mean, this look, if we can give AOE some technical changes here that makes this more doable, I'm all for that. I don't pretend to really understand what they're getting here. But it doesn't, doesn't scream out of me. But so no, I'm good at this point, but I'm not quite sure how we go forward from here.
Right, and I guess Rosie's the one that sent this over, along with Ted Fisher that we heard from last week or the week before. But if it would seem like if Rosie feels like this is positive changes that would make it easier for her and the agency to administer the program, seems like, it would make sense to do it. So I don't know if any of you have opinions in regards to, just general opinions in regards to those changes or not.
I don't really have an opinion yet. I just have those questions. And I don't know where we're going here. Both us and Ed has already voted the bill out. Has it gone to appropriations yet or not?
It's down there now, Brian. And
Okay.
we're supposed to take it up this afternoon at maybe 3:00 or something like that.
Okay.
I think Jim's scheduled to come in this afternoon. I think it's around 3 without looking it up. Do you have that on your schedule, Jim?
I've got Senate Appropriations looking at this at 2:40 to 3:40.
Okay, 2:40.
Yep.
And so I would hope that either Chris or Brian that you would be able to come over there sometime during that. But these amendments that we are just talking about, they're going to show up in that bill that we already have in appropriations. And what we talked about, Brian and I and Chris earlier this morning, was that
Champion.
Brian Campion, was that if we looked at these this morning and his committee would look at these changes that Rosie proposed this afternoon, that we would do a joint floor amendment to make those changes on the floor when the bill gets there, if we get it out of appropriations. As far as that money goes, as far as moving that to the general fund, that's not in the bill, but we certainly aren't going to recommend or suggest that we do that, we're going to stick with what we talked about, is incorporating this into the overall system within a 5-year period of time. And we would need to have general fund, not general fund. We would need about $5.5 million to incorporate that over each year for the next 5 years. And Chris and I were talking earlier about maybe setting up some kind of a matching, use some federal money to match local money. So even hit school districts for the 1/5 of the 25 million that it would cost overall, that it would ease them into it over a period of time. So that's where we are. I don't know if you guys have got some comments in regards to either issue at this time or not. No. Got to have some thinking time. Jim?
Just to mention, if you're thinking about using federal funds in a matching program or otherwise, I know Steve Klein, JFO, we've talked a lot about use of ESSER 1, ESSER 2, and ESSER 3 funds. So they're tracking those buckets and how they're being used. So you might want to have a word with JFO and just see what's available.
I know they've got one heck of a lot of money in the those ESSER funds, is it, or
It's ESSER, ESSER funds, and there's 3 buckets: ESSER 1, ESSER 2, and ESSER 3.
Yeah, they haven't even spent all of one yet. I mean, it's millions and millions and millions. I've got those numbers here. Do you have the numbers, Jim?
I don't know. JFO is keeping track, and it changes. It's changing day by day as they start to use funds.
Yeah, the last deal is like 200 and some million.
But the ESSER funds, 90% have to go directly to school districts. The 10% is reserved to the secretary, and the 10% reserve is what's being used for these funding projects. So it's not as big of a number as you mentioned. I think ESSER 3 is more like 26 million available for use, for example.
At state level, right?
To be appropriated by the state for various uses. You can't restrict the 90% of the funds coming in, but you can restrict the 10%. And that's what we're talking about here.
Well, the 90%, if you got that number?
I don't know how those numbers, it's really JFO that's got those numbers.
But 10% is that number you just gave us, I believe, right?
Yeah, so 10%, yeah. So actually you can do the math, right? But about 26 million is the 10% of ESSER 3.
So that leaves 260 million going to the districts. And according to what we heard, it's pretty loose what they can use that money for a lot of different things. There's not that many strings hooked to it. So there isn't any reason why we should have to give them more money to start this little feeding program. There, and that's 3. Number 2 is how much, Jim? The 10%.
The 10%, I believe, again, is about 26 million.
For
In
ESSA 2?
ESSA 3.
No, but what about 2?
I don't know about 2 and 1. I'm not sure what's left.
Well, 1, they haven't spent all of 1 yet, and then we're going to start on 2.
The person who's got all that information is Brianna in JFO.
But anyways, so we got any other questions in regards to this language that Brian presented and Jim has just gone over with us from committee members?
No, my question is for you, Mr. Chair. Do you want me to reach out to Rosie and see if I can get a plain English explanation here? Or?
Well, somebody's got to, because Brian needs an answer to his question of why that's in there and what does that mean. And if she has other comments that she would, or you would like to ask her, or she'd like to give you, then we can relay that to Brian and Anthony and Corey.
Okay, I'll try to figure that out. Maybe I can even talk to her, and if you see me jump off, that'll be why.
Yeah, and so I get anything else for Jim from you folks? If not, thanks a lot, Jim, for coming on board as quick as you did without a lot of notice. We appreciate it.
No problem.
Yeah, and have a good day.
Okay, you too.
So you're gonna try to catch up with Rosie, Chris, and get that kind of squared away. And we've got VTC coming in at 10, but maybe Linda caught up with Chris Gray or somebody. Did you get hold of anybody to come in a little bit early, Linda?
Yes, he did come in and I told him you weren't done yet, so I can email him and see if he can come now.
Is there anyone else that has come in?
No.
No. So this next issue, well, we talked about it a little bit yesterday, dealing with the VTC farm in Norwich, Vermont. And yesterday with our joint meetings, there was a couple of people that brought that up with when we had our joint meeting yesterday with the House. So we've got, I think you got new agendas this morning from Linda. So is that we've got Pat Moulton coming from VTC, and she can tell us and explain to us what their thinking is down there. And then Chris Gray he's the guy that rents the farm at the present time. And then Omer, is that Triaman. He's from the foundation, and so we'll see what their deal. They own the land that's around the farm, as far as I know and understood. So I think our question is the farm gonna stay farming? What's gonna happen to the guy that's there and the farmers that's there? Did he have an option, or could he have bought that place? Because I see where it was appraised somewhere for 1.1 million for what VTC has there. And so anyways, we've got some questions. We certainly, I would think, would want to keep that farm farming, and if at all possible, and see, you know, what they have in mind to move forward with. So if any of you want to grab a coffee or anything, we'd take 5 minutes and do
Sure.
that. And maybe if Linda hears back from Chris, we'll start as soon as, if he comes in time so we can get going, Linda, before Pat's time. Otherwise, we'll wait for Pat.
Okay,